Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Brian from Kingdom Hearts Cross Nation, and for today's video, we are going over the new Saix Plus medal that just came out for the Organization 13 event that we just have right now. I can already tell that there was going to be a lot of kind of debate or confusion as to whether or not this medal is actually going to be worth it. Part of it partially because of its multiplier, and one thing I feel like a lot of people are actually not taking into account is the fact that the multipliers for some of the medals that are on sites such as like mine and on khuxtracker.com and such can be a little bit misleading for certain types of medals, especially nowadays. So I'm hoping to address some of these things in this video. As always, though, Saix Plus is available at my website right here on the front screen at khuxnation.com. If you go there, click on the medal, it'll take you right to the medal analysis article. If you happen to be watching from sometime in the future, you can always click on the medal analysis tab in the top right hand corner of the screen as well, and to go and try and find the medal. Alright, so without further ado, let's jump right into the medal analysis. Alright, so Saix Plus is a power reverse tier 8 random target medal, costs 6 gauges. Has a 6-star score of 55.772. And currently, as of right now, the 7-star score is unavailable just due to the fact that I don't have the total max strength for his 7-star version as of yet to be able to give an accurate score. He has a total max multiplier at 6-star at 24.09. And his ability is he raises the general strength, reverse strength, and power strength by 7 tiers. And he lowers your own personal PSM defense by 2 tiers. And this is all for 3 turns. His 7-star version does the exact same thing, except that his multiplier is now a 50.03 instead. Okay, so starting off, there's quite a few interesting things about this medal that kind of need to be stated, just simply because of the fact that I already know, and from what I've seen already from like my own Discord, as well as the fact that, like I mentioned before, it can be a little bit misleading on sites such as like my own with my charts and the tracker website as well. But I already know that because of the fact that we have listed for certain medals, such as like with Warrior of Light and Saix Plus, as them both pretty much having the same type of multipliers of around a 50.03, or for Warrior of Light 50.09 for instance, people are going to kind of assume that they have similar multipliers, or that they're pretty much the same thing, and it's not going to be worth it, yada yada. Okay, and the main thing that people are kind of just forgetting about or not realizing, which is part of the whole misleading factor, is in partially due to the fact that they give themselves that guilt percentage bonus. Okay, you can't really compare a medal that gives itself a plus 30% guilt percentage bonus to a medal that doesn't have a guilt percentage bonus at all. Okay, because realistically, we're at a point in time now where a lot of more and more medals, especially among the prime medals right now, are being released that give all medals in the setup afterwards that guilt percentage bonus, and the percentages are just getting higher and higher and higher, which overwrite any lower amounts of guilt buffs. So because of this, the 30% that medals such as like Warrior of Light, for instance, provide don't actually really matter anymore. Warrior of Light has an alternative total max multiplier of 50.09 max with the 30% guilt buff that it gives itself included in that multiplier. However, if we were to not include that plus 30% guilt buff that's included from its ability, it would actually have a multiplier of 45.54. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is because, like I mentioned before, you can't compare a medal with a guilt buff to a medal without the guilt buff. So I need to make sure I get across clearly what the multipliers are actually like when you make a fair comparison. So if Warrior of Light has a multiplier of 50.09, including the 30% guilt buff, that would mean what would Saix Plus have if it also had a 30% guilt buff? Okay. At base, Saix Plus already has a multiplier of 50.03, which is already greater than Warrior of Light's base 45.54 multiplier at base. Okay, if we choose to give Saix Plus the 30% guilt buff, just like with Warrior of Light, it would then jump up to a 54.58 multiplier. Compared to Warrior of Light's 50.09 multiplier at 30%. But because of the fact of how the game is going right now, and prime medals are constantly making an appearance, especially with how easy they are to get as well, you can get them at least in one pull, even with just no dots, no traits, no nothing. Realistically, we're probably going to have 40% multipliers, or if you have a 7-star prime medal, a 60% multiplier, or if you happen to have the new Kyrie or Shion EX Plus medals as well, an 80% multiplier, okay? So in those cases, the same exact thing as you've already seen is going to happen. Saix Plus is going to have the higher multiplier compared to Warrior of Light, regardless of what the percentage is for the guild buff. Just for example though, just to show you guys, if we have the 40% guild buff that the Prime medals give us at 6-star base, that would mean that Warrior of Light would then have a 51.61 multiplier instead, and Saix Plus would then have a 56.09 multiplier as well, okay? So as of right now, in this game, Saix Plus is quite literally the strongest damage medal in the game, alongside the new Illustrated Invisible that we've gotten recently in VIP. So after realizing this, that alone already puts Saix Plus in a really good spot in terms of how valuable it is as a medal. Okay, it's already better than Lexaeus Plus in terms of damage. It's already better than any other high damage medal like Scar, for example. It's quite literally tied for the strongest damage medal in the entire game, alongside Illustrated Invisible. Now, of course, it doesn't directly replace medals like Lexaeus Plus because of the fact that Lexaeus Plus provides counters, something that Saix Plus does not do. And if we were to take a look at his ability again, it does say that his ability lasts for 3 turns. He fully buffs everything by 3 turns. But, however, that also means that he lowers your personal self PSM defense by 2 tiers for 3 turns, okay? Obviously, the biggest benefit when it comes to this ability is the fact that it fully buffs you for power reverse at the very least for 3 turns, which is obviously perfect for PvP. However, that also means that as a double-edged sword is, it has some drawbacks for being 3 turns as well, okay? In case any of you guys have not realized already, because of the fact he lowers your PSM defense by 2 tiers for 3 turns as well, that also means that that debuff itself can also stack every single time you use Saix Plus. So just to quickly illustrate that, that means on turn 1, you're going to have -2 PSM debuffs, okay? On turn 2, because it does last for 3 turns, that means they're going to get another -2 PSM debuffs on top of the last -2 you got from turn 1, for a total of -4 PSM debuffs. And the same thing's going to happen on turn 3, where if you use that, you're going to have a total of -6 PSM debuffs by turn 3. This is the drawback that Saix Plus kind of has, which is where the longer the battle draws out, the more dangerous it becomes to actually use him for his damage, okay? Now, obviously, after stating that, that would also mean this is going to be one of the very few medals within the entire game that you would not actually want to have extra attack on, the trait. For it, just simply because of the fact it just expedites that process even more, and that's not what you want at all. Luckily, though, because of the fact that it only provides a -2 PSM debuff, on top of being the strongest damage medal in the game, this provides a few notable situations that you can look at for this medal. The first one being that because of the fact it is the strongest damage medal in the game, and it does fully buff you of all your buffs, the only thing you have to worry about are debuffs at this point, which you can easily do with like the Prime medals now anyways. Realistically, chances are you're going to kill most things in the first turn that you use them anyways, unless it's like PvP or something, for example. For the most part, most things in the game, you're going to one-shot with Saix Plus anyways. That -2 defense debuff isn't going to really matter to you. The second situation that you can take a look at is that in the case that the -2 defense debuff does bother you for whatever reason, it is actually not a big deal, simply because of the fact you can have many of the most common turtle medals help easily get rid of these PSM debuffs that Saix Plus provides. The only thing I want you guys to be aware of, though, is the fact you would need to multicast those turtle medals quite a few times just to make sure that you actually cover up the full amount of PSM debuffs that Saix Plus is going to be trying to give you. And that is because of the fact that, as far as I'm aware anyways, almost all of the most common turtle medals that we use right now only last for 2 turns, whereas Saix Plus lasts for 3. So that means you would need to provide a little bit higher defense buffs over Saix's debuffs in order to make sure that even for that 3rd turn, you can still be able to mitigate the effects. Now, the third situation is the fact that there's also very easily the situation where the enemy is just so strong, it doesn't matter how much defense you have in the first place, for example, because every once in a while there are enemies that are just completely unturtleable. So in which case, if you can't turtle the enemy anyways in the first place, and you die in one hit regardless of what you do, a debuff like this honestly doesn't even matter, to be honest. I might as well just take the highest damage medal anyways in the first place, try and do as much damage to kill the opponent as fast as possible before I can run out of second chances through my pet skill and my medal skill. Alright, so the last thing I want to mention before I move on to my spreadsheets comparing this medal with other medals is talking about how exactly does Saix Plus affect PvP, because obviously the fact it's multi-turn, especially for the fact it lasts for 3 turns, is definitely going to impact PvP on top of being the highest damage medal in the game too. At the very least, these are my thoughts as to how I believe Saix Plus is going to affect PvP, which is pretty much that because of the fact he's the highest damage medal in the game. I know there's a common trend, justifiably too, where people will use their strongest damage setup for turn 1, both as an attacker and defender. Not everybody does this as well, and that's part of the strategy, but it is a common trend. And especially for a medal like Saix Plus, where it does last for 3 turns, it doesn't hurt to want to try and make the most use out of an ability like that, so that way it carries through for all the rest of your medals. And because of the fact that you can only use each copy of a medal once throughout all of your setups, that also helps mitigate the drawbacks that Saix Plus obviously gives himself from using him. To the point where it's honestly not even a big deal if you can approach it properly. If you make setups such as like mine, like I do for my PvP, where I pretty much have a defense boost max skill on my turtle medals within the game, it ends up working out okay because of the fact that my turtle medals will actually negate the defensive debuffs that Saix Plus will be providing to me as a player, okay? And I have this in every single one of my setups, so regardless of the outcome, because of the fact that that's just how I put together my PvP setups, Saix Plus debuffs don't actually do anything or mean anything to me as a player. So I would be able to afford to be able to use this medal very effectively. In the instance that that's not how you actually put together your PvP setups. So let's say, for example, you don't actually use turtle medals in your setups at all whatsoever. Just as an example, you like to put your defense skills on a damage medal or like a utility medal or something, okay? A Kyrie medal, whatever. It's still not a bad thing because of the fact that it is only -2 PSM defense, and chances are the opponent that you're facing is going to want to fully debuff you anyways, so having -2 PSM debuff isn't going to really do too much, especially with like prime medals in the mix and with the Kyrie and Shion EX Plus being in the mix, where it makes it pretty easy to fully debuff the opponent anyways. Having the -2 PSM debuff for PvP isn't really a big deal. Alright, but other than that, let's go ahead and take a look at these spreadsheets for Saix Plus. So as of right now, we are in the tier 8 section of my site, looking at the 6-star medal spreadsheet that I have prepared. And just a quick mention as well, I do have 7-star spreadsheets already up and available for almost every single tier within the game. The only ones I don't have at the moment, at the time of making this video, is tiers 3 and 5. I will be having those updated shortly. But at the very least, I have the rest of them put up already. We'll be taking a look at tier 7 for just a little bit, but not completely, just simply because of the fact that I don't have the actual max strength stat for a majority of the tier 8 medals within the game, and the strength stat does go into the actual score values that I use on the site. So at the very most, we'll probably be just looking at comparisons and multipliers for 7-star. But just starting off, let's look at the 6-star medals. So as of right now, the spreadsheet is organized according to score as of right now. And taking a look at it real quick, we can see that Saix Plus actually gets put right here in about the middle, with his score of 55.772. In my opinion, this is actually a pretty fair placement, considering the fact that he does provide full max buffs. No debuffs, obviously, on the opponent. The debuffs he placed on you yourself as the player, though, did subtract from his score a little bit. So if it wasn't for the debuffs he provides on yourself, he actually would have had a slightly higher score. But nonetheless, he still has a pretty good score for 6-star. And if we just look above, he does have all the stained glass medals and carries Shion EX Plus right above him, which makes sense. They literally provide like most things within the game. So it makes sense why those medals would be a little bit higher than Saix Plus. But other than that, the only medals that are closer are Illustrated Invisible, which is tied for it as the other strongest damage medal within the game, tied with Saix Plus. Technically, Illustrated Invisible is the strongest, but it's only slightly stronger by like a few points. If we go ahead and organize this by the total max multipliers, we can see right here that Saix Plus is the strongest damage medal within the tier 8s of the game. Just to help compare this to other damage medals within the game as well, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the tier 7 spreadsheet. I have it organized by total max multiplier already, and as we can see right here, the strongest medals within the game are Scar, Illustrated Diz, and King Triton, with their total max multiplier at 21.9. Okay, this makes sense. So Saix Plus is the strongest for total max multiplier. Now let's go ahead and organize this by alternative total max multiplier. Taking a look at this, we can see that Illustrated Invisible and Toon Sora Goofy are stronger in terms of multiplier. Purely in terms of multiplier, I can't really consider Toon, Sora, and Goofy as an actual stronger damage in general, though, just because of the fact it does have that dispel effect on it. So that would mean that would naturally not actually be as strong compared to Illustrated Invisible and Saix Plus. However, Saix Plus is, like I mentioned before, just slightly below that. It's about 0.05 points below these two. So that's just worth mentioning. At the very least, Illustrated Invisible and Saix Plus are pretty much the strongest damage models in the game. And Lexius Plus comes right below Saix Plus at a 20.3. Now, if we go ahead and compare this to the Tier 7 spreadsheet, let's go ahead and organize this by alternative total max multiplier. We can see, as I mentioned before, that FFRK, Terra, and Warrior of Light rise up to the top above Scar, Illustrated Diz, and King Triton with a 24.16 multiplier. Now, like I mentioned before, this is a misleading misconception that is on sites such like mine, which I probably going to be looking at changing in the future to give a little bit more of an accurate representation. That's it for today, guys. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a like and subscribe and hit that bell button. It is the best way to know when I upload more videos such as this one. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns regarding the medal, feel free and leave your comments down in the comment section down below. But other than that, my name is Brian from Kingdom Hearts Cross Nation, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Peace.